Hey guys, welcome back to the Casual NBA Fanatic podcast. Now, we're only about a week and a half into the season, but already we've seen multiple different types of trends, surprises, and just early narratives that are starting to form here. And there are some teams, obviously, that are truly overperforming so far to start the year. Obviously, we've seen what Chicago's been able to do. Portland Trailblazers, the San Antonio Spurs, Milwaukee Bucks, multiple other teams as well. And we've also just seen some stars also just setting new individual standards. Austin Reeves, Larry Markkinen, Tyrese Maxey, some guys that are really flourishing and just raising the bar in their new opportunities that they do have. And so for today's episode, I'm going to be running through my 5 early season hot takes and just a mix of predictions, probably overreactions too, and just things that I genuinely believe will probably define how this season does unfold. And for me, these aren't just surface level observations. They're kind of just trends that I think will actually remain throughout the season for who they relate to. And so let's get into it with a fun take that I have, which is amidst all the Wemby hype, I think Nikola Jokic will still firmly be stamped as the best player in the world by the end of the season. Now, obviously, it's not just Wemby, but from the actual established guys in that top 4 zone, everyone has been giving Jokic true competition as rivaling him as the best player in the world. We've seen what SGA has been able to do floating the undefeated Oklahoma City Thunder, just the elite half-court scoring inevitability that he brings at just staggering volume and efficiency rates. Luka Doncic, he looks like the best offensive player going around in basketball at this point in time. Just absolutely inevitable what he's able to do, destroying the floor offensively. We've seen what Giannis has been able to do, carrying a Bucks squad that looks really invigorated to actually present a top 6 seed in that weak Eastern Conference as well. And they look under manned personnel wise, but Giannis just as that distributor, as that offensive orchestrator, and a guy that's also reaching a pretty high defensive ceiling, which he hasn't hit for quite a few years. He looks exceptional now too. But except for those 3 guys, we know that a ton of the hype around this megastar conversation has been around Victor Wembanyama and where he will be in this year's player projections by the end of the season. And obviously that is for good reason. I mean, Victor's made major growth steps to close that gap between him and Jokic. We talk about the defensive stuff. That is the biggest differentiator between these 2 guys. We're talking about all-time level rim deterrence. His wingspan is insane. But just the actual radius and his actual contesting coverage, it's unbelievable. It's staggering. And in terms of being able to rotate on the block as well, being able to provide that help, especially with the Spurs who can play a lot of that aggressive type of coverages where they can really shrink the strong side floor. We're also talking about a guy that just brings superhuman recovery abilities just because of that added wingspan. We're just talking about overall intimidation value, which really creates the whole rim deterrence factor. Just forcing plays into the most absurdly hard tunnel vision types of reads in the paint. And then you also talk about the offensive growth, maturity, shot selection, ball handling growth, and just a greater understanding for, protecting his drives and the handle with his body. And just major improvements in shot efficiency across the floor. So basically, in terms of just the gap between Jokic and Wembanyama, this guy is coming very, very fast. And in terms of movement fluidity, he's got much more stronger and structured balance, way greater levels of power transfer, especially on those off the dribble counter looks, just way more explosive agility overall bursting into the lane. So basically, the guy's fully evolving in front of our eyes. But for me, the gap between him and Jokic is just something that I think will take at least another year or 2 to fully close for Victor. I just think Jokic, as it stands right now, and those not putting up staggering scoring numbers, he's still the best basic advantage creator in basketball. And I think his on and off ball value is still just a step more efficient in the half court landscape, which is what is most optimal for playoff style basketball. And from reviewing from a playoff resilient standpoint, Jokic is the most stable playoff megastar in the NBA. And simply put, Wemby just hasn't yet experienced that scene just yet. And he hasn't seen the most hellacious of defensive coverages in the biggest high-stake games. Jokic just last year in just 2 series, 2 Game 7 types of experience that he's had to go through probably playing the most hellacious defense that he's ever had to go through in his entire career against that Oklahoma City Thunder team. Like a team that I think would rip Wembanyama to shreds when it comes to a playoff series. And with Jokic, I just think there's a lot less variance just with the more efficient shot hunting approach that he has towards things and just a greater half-court level of dominance here. And that is what I value greatest when it comes to building a championship-level squad. A championship-level team that can survive 4 long, grinded-out rounds of physical basketball. And once Victor starts rallying up that experience against the top-tier, keyed-in defensive squads, you know, these teams that can get 7 games to be able to try and solve and rattle Wembanyama and his impact. Once he gets to that stage, then I reckon we may see him really turn that last corner before he can claim the crown as the undisputed best player on the planet. Now, my second take that I'm going to go through today will be about Jamal Murray, so Nikola Jokic's running mate. And I think all-star Jamal Murray, that version is now here. Now, with Jamal, I think he looks unbelievable right now. He's in peak form, peak shape. Just opening up the year, he averaged 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists just through those first 3 games on 53, 43, 92 splits. And he was a plus 10.7 as well. And that just gave the Nuggets through those first 3 games, especially now he's played 5 now against Portland and New Orleans, but just giving them more super polished shot making from all levels and just giving them maybe the most athletic and explosive version of Jamal Murray in the Jokic era. And in particular, mostly just at the start of the regular season. We haven't seen Jamal Murray come in to the NBA season looking just this sharp overall. And with Denver presenting for me as at least the second favorite for the title, and to be honest with you, I was very, very close to giving them the nod over OKC. But with this level of dominance that Denver project to have, I just think Jamal Murray's contributions to what will probably be an all-time half-court resilient offense will get him dramatic respect when it does come to the All-Star voting period. And just like the contributions in terms of just the jump shooting value that he brings. And I think this will definitely give him his first All-Star appearance. And I think if he can relatively sustain anything that he's doing at the moment to start the year, and like if he can carve out a production-based season averaging around 25, 5, and 6, that type of an individual season for me will definitely be within the cards for him and will be definitely what can give him that All-Star level campaign. Now, also adding to this as well, like obviously with Denver, Nikola Jokic is so staggeringly valuable for this team, but at the moment, Jokic looks relatively like unselfish and he's just purely just trying to churn together movement and advantages for this offense. And for Jamal Murray, just being their most aggressive scoring fuel, I think that just gives him an easy avenue for an all-star level of respect. And I think definitely his first appearance, I don't think this is like a massive take. And like this doesn't really disrupt anything in terms of like, you know, how the league shapes out to be. I just think Jamal Murray has been just such a great consistent star in this league for so long. And I think it's been a long time at this level of dominance, and we haven't yet seen him being able to approach the regular season with this level of intensity and sharpness. And I think in terms of just how polished he looks right now, I mean, out of pick and rolls, I mean, he looks terrifyingly good next to Nikola Jokic. In those first 4 games, Murray was making 59% of his shots within the paint non-restricted area, 41% from the mid-range, and 44% on above the break threes. And that included 47% on pull-up threes. It's just exceptional shape. I mean, and like also just unmatched form for Jamal Murray's own like standard. And with the level of intensity that he's thrusted straight out the gate to start the year, I think this is Jamal's year to finally get that all-star appearance with just how good Denver looked to be as well. And this will be one of my favorite takes of the year if Jamal Murray can get that all-star nod. I think the West, like the pool of talent in the Western Conference is absolutely stacked still. But this guy's that level of star and he looks that good and Denver look this good already. And I just think Denver's actual regular season floor will be super high. Now, moving on to my third hot take from just the week and a half of basketball that we've seen, I think we need to start to reassess the 76ers and their ceiling in this weak Eastern Conference. And like possibly if they can push up into the top 3 echelon of this conference. Now, reviewing the East, between the Atlanta Hawks, the Orlando Magic, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the New York Knicks, I think we need to add the 76ers into that certified at least top 6 range, which, to be honest with you, I had a struggle like even pitching them into my play-in seed. And this is only really if they can stay healthy. And just with how out of form some of those other teams look, like Atlanta look pretty shaky, Orlando look really out of rhythm, the Knicks look extremely out of rhythm. I just think the 76ers, just with their offensive execution from their perimeter guys, that just presents them with just such a high ceiling for this season. And these are all pretty hard calls to make. Like all of these 5 takes I'm coming up, they're all pretty hard to make, just considering how early in the season we are. But the East is shaping out to be much more competitive than we expected. And you can't have nights of, lackluster basketball execution from teams if you are like New York and Cleveland every single night. And with all the other teams in the East, I mean, this conference just looks a lot more competitive, and it really stems from the shifts in play styles amongst all the other mid-tier teams that we would have projected. And in terms of leaning quite strongly into that 2025 Pacers style of execution on the margins with just, high pace, physical intensity, the Raptors, Miami, Milwaukee, these are all teams that look particularly strong embedding that type of culture into their play. And they look extremely strong to make top 6 seed runs as well. But for Philadelphia, I just really love their actual star power. And I think that is what differentiates them from those other mid-tier teams and what will be like the actual bailout factor for them that will mightily raise their team's ceiling. Like obviously the way Miami are playing right now, the way Milwaukee and Toronto are playing, just their floor seems pretty much set in stone at this point in time. But this Philadelphia team, I mean, backed by Tyrese Maxey, they look extremely dangerous right now. And Maxey himself, through 5 games, 35 points, 5 rebounds, and 9 assists with 2.2 stocks a game on 46, 47, 87 splits. And so he's just shooting the ball like an absolute maniac, off movement, out of pick and roll, off the catch, and from just such extraordinary range as well. And with Tyrese's like speed advantages that are embedded basically against every single matchup, I just think his sustainable offensive production looks pretty real at this point in time. And his actual efficiency increase is what like has fully ascended him as a star talent in this league. And then adding to that as well, like the backcourt like stardom that they have, VJ Edgecombe, he's been by far the best rookie so far. Just an absolute transition freak, and just the value that it brings. When you were talking about that Pacers identity from last year, just leaning into having a transition monster like what the Pacers had with guys like Aaron Nesmith, and having Tyrese Halliburton as that quarterback, having Pascal Siakam as that executor finishing at the rim in transition. That's what VJ brings to this squad already. He's transcendently great at that. And the exceptional off-ball feel, super athletic attack and closeouts. He's 77% at the rim. And in terms of just the shot making off the catch, on threes in general, this guy's shooting 44%. And just a really great blend of maturity and confidence from a rookie, and from a guy that can play at basically every single pace, it seems like. And adding to those 2 guys, I mean, you're getting major contributions from Quentin Grimes, Kelly Oubre looks exceptional, Justin Edwards, Jabari Walker, Andre Drummond. These guys that can help boost the offensive identity, which is through a physical front line and just a super confident athletic shooting perimeter line as well. And so for the ceiling as well, I mean, they've still got Embiid there who can give you a power jack 25 minutes of offensive center minutes a night. You still got Paul George, who's still probably just a mystery for when he gets back as well. But the 76ers, obviously they're going to have a ton of roster inconsistency with these injured stars, but their ceiling remains super high, and we might have to start taking them super seriously in this weak Eastern Conference with just how shaky the other teams at the top of the East look to start straight out the gate. Now, my number 4 take that I'm going to hit off today will be why I'm close to zeroing in on the Knicks championship chances. Now, this isn't an official take as such, but for the Knicks, I just have a really hard time believing in both their roster construction, but also just their overall situation in general. Now, their jeopardized pick and roll defense is just stuffed as it is. We don't need to keep hitting on that fact, but I just start to lose belief when, the fact that they're waiting on a super physical, non-skill big to come in and pair next to their biggest defensive weak point in the starting unit. And like, I just think the floor for that type of double big pairing itself, and like, I just don't believe in it that much. And like, just the scale of change that they've experienced within their coaching and the strategic variance between going from this, brute force pace stalling style of offense to more of this erratic trigger heavy offense that really only tends to float well in the regular season unless you have this supercharged movement shooting star core like what the Warriors and what the Celtics had. And look, I know that they didn't start particularly great last year either, and they still were able to rally together a pretty good regular season, and that backed off a pretty strong playoff campaign. But we rarely see champions not fully understand what their formula is heading into any season. And for the Knicks, like, their actual situation just looks so inconsistent and unreliable for sustainability. Against the Heat and the Bucks on those two recent games, just their shot-heavy offense, the fact, like, when that wasn't dropping for them, the only patches in those games where I did see them actually have control over their offense was when Jalen Brunson was just utterly toasting every single defender on the floor and just fully altering defensive structure. And with their personnel, like, I just don't really see it. Like, in Sacramento, the Kings had Sabonis as that primary initiator and offensive quarterback. And that works because Sabonis is a guy who can flourish in any pace as a highly mobile big with just a tremendous handle, someone who thrived making reads out of DHO initiation, setting powerfully effective off-ball screens to open up guys, and just making reads out of the post. But with Cat, his inability to flourish out of the post to the same degree, and just the absence of that truly special screening instinct, that just means he can't really contribute anywhere near to that same degree as an offensive fulcrum. And for Cat, it's more about creating out of drives. And for centers, I mean, that just brings a lot more variance when it comes to like your vision advantages and making reads. And that really stems from just the extra help and the unnecessary pace that driving the ball brings in the half court compared to just taking your time methodically scanning the floor out of the post. And that is the biggest differentiator between that Kings offense compared to what the Knicks have going right now. And so just the situation just for me just seems pretty off. And though the talent is good overall, I just think the roster matched with their choice of offense for me, I just don't see how they can actually reach that special offensive ceiling level that they need to actually truly overcome their current defensive situation. And really, this is just my early gut feeling, just looking at the Knicks right now and for the near future. Like, I just think they've got, like, I just think they have to go all in on like just a different star talent in general. And like moving away from Karl Anthony Towns, I think Jalen Brunson is legit that level of talent that can actually float a championship level of offense. But I just think with Cat, you got to bring in someone instead that can fully mitigate all of those glaring weaknesses that do deprive teams of hoisting the title that are deeply embedded in New York's current roster construction at this point in time. But obviously time will tell. I mean, they did make the conference finals last year, and the conference is like substantially weaker overall, like in terms of that top tier talent. And obviously it is hard to rule them out, like fully rule them out. But like, for me, I just don't see a pathway currently for the Knicks to actually pose as true championship contenders at this point in time. Now, moving on. Now, my fifth and last take of the day will be why I think San Antonio need to prioritize that Dylan Harper and Stephon Castle backcourt foundation over De'Aaron Fox starting right now. Now, for San Antonio, like, obviously this is a pretty good problem to have as it does relate to roster balance for a team that doesn't really have a timeline of contention just yet. But obviously the roster balance between the future of their star guard rotation between Castle, Fox, and Dylan Harper, like, I just think, especially after giving De'Aaron Fox just that staggering 4-year deal and an extension that won't be super easy to move unless the right team appears in trade conversations. But for the Spurs, the actual talent that we've seen already from Dylan Harper and Stephon Castle and just their fit next to Wemby, I think that's given enough confidence for their own individual fit. And I think that makes the Fox arrival a little bit redundant in hindsight now looking back onto it. And despite Wemby, I mean, Wemby, obviously, despite him being good enough to win right now, I think it's inevitable that he will experience major growth pains when they do like actually hit their first playoff level of experience against defenses like, you know, in the West, you still got teams like Houston, OKC, and Golden State out there. Some of the most strategically and athletically sound teams that you can throw at a Victor Wembanyama-led offense. And I just don't see the major rush when you do have a true all-star ceiling, like a youth pairing between Steph Castle and Dylan Harper already in your locker room. And like Fox wasn't great last year in San Antonio, and obviously much of that was to do with the lack of chemistry and timing with Wemby as opposed to his pairing with Sabonis as that role man partner. And just, you know, obviously general change of a scenery that does play into your inconsistency of like your actual play in general. But for me, just looking at how good Dylan Harper especially has been, like obviously we're looking at a difference in shot diet. Like this guy is one of the most relentless rim pressuring talents that the league has ever seen. Just the value we've already seen from that, just coming off the bench, a rookie version at that, just the value that we've seen and the impact that he's able to bring off the bench. Like he's already got great timing with Wemby as well out of pick and roll, just an exceptional advantage creator, someone that can make these really high level cross-court reads at just such high pace, just fueling offense already off the bench. Like I just think this guy already looks exceptional and like ready to receive some sort of playoff level of experience. And obviously one of these three guys as well, like when we're looking at like how teams need to actually balance their roster, I think one of these three guys starting will need to at least be that specialized off-ball glue guy. But with Devin Vassell already staking claim as that, you know, primary movement shooter and like staking claim on those movement actions, I just think having a superb athlete who can increase the Spurs, like their actual ability to play on the margins in transition, you know, cross-match hunting with physicality and just adding more of that physical imposition from the perimeter as a relatively developed passing prospect. I just think Castle slots into that with less defensive drawbacks than what it would be like having a double small guard lineup with Fox and Dylan Harper. And so I just think the actual slot is pretty clear here. And though there is no desperate need to get rid of De'Aaron Fox anytime soon, I just think after seeing what type of ceiling this current Spurs construction can get you, I just think filling in your talent gaps with guys that could be seriously interesting trade targets, you know, like maybe like a Larry Markkinen or like even like a Jaden McDaniels. I just think guys who could seriously provide real valuable roles for a team that still does lack, you know, skill touch-ups on various positions. You know, a team that lacks truly aggressive, rangy defensive coverage on the perimeter. A team that can be pretty weak in the physicality department in various stretches, especially in those non-double big looks when Cornette or Sohan aren't on the floor. But like, obviously, this is more of just a thought process type of thing for San Antonio. And just what the ceiling looks like for the Wemby-led Spurs era, I just think leaning into this as early as you can, especially with how good Dylan Harper looks right now. Obviously, Steph Castle is a bit more matchup dependent at this point in time, but he's growing really fast, and who knows what another 80 games will do to him by the time the Spurs probably do hit that first level of playoff experience by the end of this year. And so those are my 5 hottest takes early on in the season. And it started off, I just think Jokic will be the best player in basketball by the end of the season once again. I think Jamal Murray will finally earn that all-star nod. I think the Sixers are slowly becoming that legitimate Eastern Conference favorite threat. I think the Knicks, just obviously looking at their dreary championship outlook. And for the Spurs, it's the conversation on whether De'Aaron Fox is truly a part of that long-term equation. Now, it's obviously early, but these are the kinds of trends that do shape a season, and I'll be tracking how each of these takes do age throughout the months. But I thank you guys for tuning in, and if you guys have any of your own early season takes, drop them in the comments or DM me at Casual NBA Fanatic. And as always, hit follow and check out the podcast for more in-depth breakdowns every week.